Good morning and welcome back to News and Views on Salam Media, where we'll dig deep into the stories that shape our world. I'm your host, Salilo Makwidira, and as I mentioned before we went to that short break, that we'll be having a very, very Lebanon strong theme to today's show. And it'll be our key focus where the air is thick with tension, warplanes, and heartache as Israeli airstrikes intensify. And there's a threat of a ground invasion looming for the civilians of Lebanon. And amid that devastation, life goes on for the people of Lebanon who are caught in the crossfire of political and military agendas perpetuated by the Israeli genocidal machine, which continues to go unabated and continues to murder women and children with impunity as the world watches and does nothing. They've done it to the people of Palestine. They are tired there. They feel like it's a successful mission, and now they move on to Lebanon. Who knows where else they're going to go if we continue to keep quiet and not, show action and show solidarity with those affected by this genocidal machine, and to gain furthermore insights on the lived realities of the people of Lebanon. Joining us in a bit is a Lebanese researcher and editor in chief of Rawiya, a digital magazine in Lebanon. We're joined by Michelle Eid. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Even if it's in very, very difficult circumstances, we really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you for having me.
I think our point of departure, and I think it's always interesting, to speak to people who are literally in the heart and eye of the storm. If you can take us back, a few days ago, when the siege and this mass murder of the people of Lebanon started, just take us through that day. What was it like? What happened? And ultimately, where we find ourselves today.
When you mentioned that at first, I had to try to find the day you're talking about, because the past week, the 2 weeks, the past 11 months have been very scary and traumatic for the Lebanese people. But obviously, the intensity has risen in the past week or two. The first thing that I think about are the pager attacks. This was something that was very scary that happened last week. And it wasn't isolated as well. You had another set of pager attacks that happened the next day, where people who had pagers on their bodies, they had them, on their hips, they just exploded. They were around people, they were in the community, they were in supermarkets, they were picking up their kids from school. So this was nothing less than a terrorist attack that hit the entirety of Lebanon, primarily in the south, in Dahi, which is a Beiruti suburb, and in the Beqaa. And then another set of that happened the next day, and then a strike on a very densely populated residential area in Dahi, in the southern suburb of Beirut. And then that all culminated to Monday, this past Monday, where all hell broke loose when Israel started indiscriminately bombing and conducting airstrikes on different areas in Lebanon, primarily in the south, in South Lebanon, in the Beqaa region. And in the past 2 days, it has also reached Mount Lebanon. There was an airstrike that took place on the mountain behind my house just yesterday. And so you can imagine this week has been a very traumatic week for the Lebanese people. I can describe it as nothing less than terrorism, than sheer terrorism, than a genocidal entity just causing havoc and spreading horror across our lands. You've got people, you've got families just fleeing en masse, leaving the south, leaving Beqaa, trying to find a safe haven anywhere in the country. So I don't know, it's nothing less than a horror movie, I would say.
If you can just take us, maybe not even take us, but maybe just in comparison wise, because this is not the first time that Lebanon has faced conflicts before. How does this particular escalation compare to the previous ones, in terms of the humanitarian impact and just, the sheer scale of impunity that the Israeli genocidal forces are now operating in?
So the last big quote unquote conflict, which was a war, which was Israel, it was a war in Lebanon by Israel. It happened, sorry, my words stumbled upon each other, but it happened in 2006. So there was the war that was happening between them and Lebanon, particularly with Hezbollah at the time. And it was the July war. And the entirety, the casualties that resulted from that war, I can't remember the name, I mean the number exactly, but it was over 1,200 individuals. This past week alone, on Monday alone, you had 558 martyrs. On Wednesday, you had 72. We're still waiting for Wednesday, as in yesterday. We're still waiting for the tolls to come out on what happened last night, because there were massacres all over the Bekaa and at the same time simultaneously in the south. So in terms of human toll, it is insane. We've already exceeded the amount of people who were killed in the 2006 war. But again, this is not the first time that Israel is in our lands and on our lands. It invaded Lebanon in 1982. It left in 2000, and behind it, it left a legacy of murder, of bloodshed, of occupation. And so, but this time around, what we're experiencing now is a thing that we haven't experienced in a while. The toll of martyrs, of people who were killed, this is the highest number, the single most deadly day. You can say that Monday was the single most deadly day that Lebanon has experienced since the civil war ended in 1990. And the civil war, it went on for 15 years. So that was a pretty bloody time for Lebanon. And this week is reminiscent of that time. So it's been a long while since we've experienced such heartbreak, such bloodshed, and purely such terrorism.
No, definitely. I don't think there's any better way to put it. And I think if there's one thing that, at least here in South Africa, we are seeing, and I most definitely the whole world is starting to see, is there's almost a similar modus operandi to how the Israeli genocidal forces, have operated in Rafah, for instance, and in Gaza, where it started by just shelling, and then there was a ground invasion of some sort. And they always say, in Gaza, for instance, they're targeting Hamas, infrastructure and institutions, and then in Lebanon, it's exact same thing. We are targeting Hezbollah infrastructure, but in you bombing households, you're killing kids, you're bombing schools. How does that narrative hold up? In the face of what's happening on the ground. What are people? How are people? Civilians of Lebanon responding to all of this?
To counter their claims that they're only attacking military targets, if they were only attacking military targets, you wouldn't have civilian deaths. It's as easy as that. It's a simple equation, and so over here in Lebanon, there is outrage. There is outrage at Western media, even going hand in hand and just taking these claims that Israel is putting out there and putting them out and stating them out as facts. When we saw, for example, I believe it was the New York Times, was it? I can't remember because of all these crazy headlines. I can't really remember anymore which media institution is putting them out, but one of them said, scores were killed, and they were talking about military targets achieved after the attacks of last week and after this past Monday. And the people in Lebanon are honestly just shocked, and they're not, you know what? No, I'm going to take that back. They're not shocked because we're not surprised at how Western media institutions are treating our deaths here. This is not the first time. We've seen how they've dealt with those being killed in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza, and we're not surprised, but we're mad, we're disgusted, because we're not allowed a proper platform to at least counter these claims on an international level. Because when they're interviewing, let's say, Western analysts, people who are very disconnected from the situation in Lebanon, they're not people who are watching these these platforms who are following these platforms, they don't get the story from Lebanon. They don't get the story from the civilians in Lebanon, the civilians in Gaza, the civilians in Palestine and the West Bank. They don't get to listen to any of that. So we're not shocked. We're disgusted, we're angered, we're angry, we're frustrated, but also we realize that we cannot seek what we want from these individuals there who don't care about our lives. And so we seek it from the community and from solidarity from each other, and hopefully from solidarity from people abroad who are listening and tuning into us right here.
No, definitely. The international community, I think, it, it it almost feels disheartening because we've seen this play out numerous times where they'll call for a ceasefire, they'll condemn the actions of Israel, which I think we can all agree that at this point it's no longer enough. Yesterday, I think a few countries in the UN, they've called for a ceasefire and diplomatic efforts, but they seem to be gaining little traction. What are the feelings of the Lebanese people towards these quote unquote diplomatic efforts that are seemingly not going to happen? Is there a feeling of abandonment? I think that this is what we've been getting a lot from the people of Palestine and Gaza, that it's starting to feel like the world is turning a blind eye. Everyone is moving on with their lives, and we're just allowing this criminal state continue their murderous adventure with impunity, and no one is calling them out.
I would say that yes, a lot of people don't really have a lot of hope in diplomatic talks or peace talks, just because we've seen how much they failed over the past few months, over the past 11 months, sorry, on what's happening in Gaza. And so, I mean, I would say the people here feel abandoned to a sort. There is a little, maybe a glimmer of hope, and a very slight glimmer of hope. But I think this is what people try to hold on to when the situation is so dire. But the prevailing sentiment is, what ceasefire? When are we going to see a ceasefire? When are we going to see justice be given to our brothers and sisters in Gaza, to our people here in Lebanon? So they listen to that and they hope for an end. And obviously, we all hope for an end to all the atrocities happening in Gaza and in Lebanon. But at the same time, we try to remain realistic, as in, do people really care about what's happening? Are these diplomatic talks happening for humanitarian means, or are they only for other interest-based means or the interests that these other countries that are in these talks, I'm sorry, this my sentence, I just jumbled my words, but what I'm trying to say is, we're wondering whether these talks are happening for the good of our people or for these countries' interests at the end of the day. Do our lives matter? Do they care about the people who are being killed? Do they care about the families being killed? Do they care that our towns are being wiped out? That there are entire towns that are not inhabitable at the moment because Israel has completely destroyed them and their infrastructure. And so I would say that we try to hold on to some bit of hope, but for the most part, we feel like we're not going to get what we need and what we deserve, and the peace that not the peace, the cease of hostilities.
Mm, And I think sometimes when we speak of an aggression like this one, we tend to forget that they're actual human beings, and all of these people that are quoted. I think we've heard reports of more than 600 deaths, and thousands that have been displaced. That these are not just numbers; these are actual people with lives. These are families. These are men, women, and kids. from what you might have heard and what you understand on the ground, what are some of the key challenges that people are facing, especially when it comes to accessing basic services like food, shelter, and medical care? I mean, the pictures that we're seeing, people trying to, get out of the south, and the traffic that we're seeing on the roads, it looks Armageddon, to be honest.
It is. So essentially, let me just go back a couple of days. When people were fleeing the South, it was haywire in the sense that there was a lot of traffic because, first of all, there were bombs falling down everywhere across the South. People were trying to make it to the main highway that can lead them to Beirut. And so or journeys that took an hour, took 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. There are people who even reported being on the road for 17 hours. People who were running out of fuel and they weren't able to fill any fuel because, first of all, it's crazy around them. There are airstrikes falling, but at the same time, there was so much traffic on the gas stations, so they were unable to get it right away. So they had to wait and wait and wait, and so that was scary and panic filling enough because they're trying to reach safety. And now, once they started reaching quote unquote safer locations, the question started of where are we going? How are we going to feed ourselves? Where are we going to put our elderly and disabled family members in places that they are comfortable enough and that they can live properly for this short period of time? And so, first of all, people were trying to find apartments to rent. And that was proving to be quite difficult because, first of all, there was such a huge demand, and at the same time, in terms of supply, there are a lot of people who were able to provide apartments for rent or for free, but there were other people who were trying to exploit the situation, who were trying to raise the prices of this rent, and making it virtually impossible for people to pay such prices, especially that where they were leaving their homes. And then the rest of the people went to shelters that were opening all across Lebanon. So people have been opening, or the government has opened schools for people who are displaced from the south to settle there. But at the same time, there were virtually nothing in these schools. So it was a matter of organizations, initiatives, people, individuals scurrying to find food, to find water, to find basic necessities, to find sleeping bags, to find mattresses. And at the same time, obviously, the government is doing what I guess it can at the moment, in terms of providing this stuff to the different schools. But it was a slow response at the same time. And we have to remember, this all happens in the backdrop of an economic crisis that Lebanon has been facing since 2019. So this doesn't happen in vacuum. So the government already does not have the proper means to sustain such an emergency response post-crisis. And that's where the questions about how much they can support the food sector, the medical sector, the emergency response sector, and so questions about that arise. We're still seeing it unfold at the moment. We're still seeing how the government can support these schools all over the country, and the schools keep on opening. They're mostly public schools, and we're still trying to see that unfold. We're still trying to see the response unfold, but the Lebanese community at large and the different communities that live in Lebanon are not waiting for that response. I'm taking part in some of these initiatives where we're going on the ground, seeing what we can provide these schools, these people who have fled, whether it be with sleeping bags, with medicine, with food. There are community kitchens that are opening all across the country to be able to support these schools with providing meals. So it is really heartening at the same time, even in such a tragic situation, that our people are rising, and we're trying to support in any shape, way, or form to support our brethren at the end of the day, because we're all one people.
No, definitely. And just from a personal point of view, what would you like the international community, and particularly Western media, to know and understand about what is happening in Lebanon right now?
At the very basis, you have to see us as humans. We are humans. We're not a people. No one in this world deserves to be killed in such an atrocious way. And we want people to be able to also direct their attention to journalists, to media platforms that are coming out of our countries, to journalists in Gaza and Lebanon who are reporting on the ground and who are reporting the reality as it is, and just stop with the dehumanization. I know I started this response with that, but stop with the dehumanization, because it is so disheartening to see us being spoken about as numbers, as just another Arab person being killed, because that is the norm, and that's not the norm. We are a people that loves to live. We are a people that enjoys life, and so just see us as any other human at the end of the day, and support on the ground initiatives as much as you can. Go protest, pressure your governments, publicize this. It's very important in such a modern day where everything is being streamed on social media. It's very important to raise your voice in person and online. And so don't underestimate the individual power that one has in this situation and in the genocide on Gaza and the war on Lebanon.
No, definitely. I think we're going to leave it there, Michelle. Thank you so much. And I definitely concur, with what you're saying, that, the longer that Israel is, literally left unabated, it's human nature. It's going to start feeling like it's normal that, you have Arabs in the Middle East that are being bombarded, that are being killed, children being torn to pieces, and women, pregnant women, elderly people, dying under the rubble. And it's just going to be just another day. We're going to scroll past it on social media, and it's going to be like, it is what it is. It has been going on for so long, and there's literally nothing we can do about it. And I think that's my biggest fear. So thank you so much for making that statement that you're humans, you're not just numbers. And you should, people should stop talking about you like you're numbers, and we should be talking to you directly, as the people that are affected by this siege and by this criminality and mass murder of the Israeli occupying forces. So yeah, you and our thoughts and prayers here in South Africa. We'll try as much as we can to tell your stories, but we're going to leave it here for now. I pray that you stay safe, and thank you so much for giving us your time, and I'm sure we'll be chatting in the not so distant future.
Thank you so much for this platform and for having me. Have a good day.
There we go. That was Michelle Eid, Lebanese researcher, and also editor-in-chief of Al Rawiya, a digital magazine known for its in-depth coverage of life under siege in Lebanon. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're sticking with the theme, as I mentioned when I started the show, that today's theme is going to be very, very strong. Themed when it comes to Lebanon, and we'll be speaking to the ambassador of Lebanon's ambassador to South Africa, His Excellency Kabalan Franyi, who'll be joining us after this short break, just to get his insights from a diplomat's point of view, and his take on what's currently happening in Lebanon and how they're trying to deal with the siege that is perpetuated by this genocidal machine, the criminal Israeli state. More on that after this.